Okay. When we took the quiz yesterday, here's what I noticed about a lot of people when I was walking around. We are not so great at reducing fractions. Got to get better. So here's some, when you were doing rise over run, here's some examples of maybe what could have shown up. So if you get -9 over -1, don't leave that. I mean, that means -9 divided by -1. That's just 9. That's where you want to get. If it asks for the slope, you give it to me as easy as you possibly can. Okay, same thing here. People don't leave negatives in denominators. Add that to your notes. No negatives get left in denominators. They're not supposed to be there. People aren't going to notice them. You're going to make other folks mess up because you didn't know any better. Don't do that. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative number. And then 5/4 won't reduce, so just leave it 5/4. Okay? All right, same thing here. 8 divided by -2. That's a negative number. And 8 divided by 2 is just flat out 4. Now, when you've got to take and actually do some arithmetic, remember this means -9 added to 3, because what's the opposite of taken away? This means 6 plus 1. So I'm going to get a -6 over a +7. Now, it's okay to leave the negative in the top. The difference is some people bring it all the way to the front. Some people put it in the numerator. Either of those is fine. People are expecting that. I actually prefer this one because sometimes when you put it out front, people will write it exactly even with a fraction and it's not as noticeable. So I actually prefer it up in the numerator. But just be careful on those. I didn't put one like 8/6, but if you get something like that, remember 8 and 6 both divide by 2. Reduce it to 4/3. Okay. And then also let's just review real quickly. Graph and lines, when they're written in slope-intercept, when they look like this, life is good. Slope, y-intercept. Slopes rise over run. The slope's going uphill, positive slope. Slope's going downhill, negative slope. Okay, so start the y-intercept. +3. Slopes 2. Rise of 2, run of 1. Rise of 2, run of 1. And then if the slope's 2 over 1, that's +2 over 1, right? That's the same thing as -2 over -1. So you can go down 2, back 1. Down 2, back 1. It's going to line you up with all the other points. That's that constant rate of change we're talking about all the time. This one, y-intercept -7. All right, now here's the thing. When you see a slope is -5/4, just go ahead and pull the negative to the top. Don't put it both places. If you had 2 negatives, it'd be a positive number. So think about it as rise of -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, run of 4. It's going to get me off the page. Okay? Like I said, that's the first way to think about it. But it is also 5 over -4. And even though I wouldn't leave an answer that way, like mathematically they're the same. Like these are equivalent. Sometimes it's helpful to think about it that way when you're doing slope. Because instead of rising -5 going down 5, we could rise +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and back up 4. Rise 5. Back up 4. And then we get that line that'll fit on our graph paper. All right, and then the other two kinds we talked about, y = 3. Remember, if it's got any kind of slant to it at all, you're going to have an x and a y. Y = 3 is just a horizontal line running through the y-axis at 3. Like every single point on that line has a y value of 3. X = -4. Every single point on that line has an x value of -4. It's just a vertical line. Remember, the slope of a horizontal line is 0. Slope of a vertical line is undefined. All right, now here's the thing, though. What if you got asked to graph this? It has a y and an x. We know it's going to slant, but it does not look like that. So our job is to make it look like this. So we're going to take that 3x minus 4y equals 12. And here's what I want to do. I want the y term over here on the left. So I'm going to leave that -4y on the left. I want the x's first thing on the right. So see how it's positive 3x on the left? If I move it to the right, that'll become negative 3x because I'm subtracting 3x from both sides. But 12 is already on the right-hand side. It's positive 12 on the first line. It's positive 12 on the next line. Now what we're doing then, to get y completely by itself, y is getting multiplied by negative 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 4. Now here's the thing though, every term in here is getting divided by negative 4. That negative 3x is getting divided by negative 4, and a negative divided by negative is a positive. And that positive 12 is getting divided by negative 4. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. And then it looks like y equals mx plus b. The slope's 3/4. The y-intercept's negative 3, and you could graph your line. Okay? All right, so this one. Find the slope and the y-intercept. So we're trying to make it look like this. Okay? Well, one of them already does. Don't do any work here. The slope is negative 6. The y-intercept is 1. Okay? All right, and then two of these, B and E, they're those little goofy lines. So y is 6.5. That's just a horizontal line running through 6.5. The slope of any horizontal line is 0. And the y-intercept is the y-intercept. It's running through at 6.5. Now, this one we actually could write like it's y equals 0 x's plus 6.5. So, you know, it can represent that. Now, this one, though, I look at x and y. X is negative 5. Remember, this is a vertical line running through x is negative 5. The slope is undefined because there's no way you can write this as y equals mx plus b. And the y-intercept, not applicable. There's not one. It's not going to hit the y-axis. Okay? All right. Now, the other three, though, let's practice this up. We're trying to go to there. So I'm going to leave the y's over here, but they're negative over here. I'm going to pull the x's to the right, so that negative 5x becomes positive 5x. Negative 2 is already over there. And then, let's see, change colors. That's like having a negative 1 out front. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. Now, remember, that means everything over here gets divided by negative 1. 5x divided by negative 1 is negative 5x. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 is positive 2. Now I can tell the slope and the y-intercept. The slope's negative 5, and the y-intercept is 2. Okay, now, one other way of thinking about this, when you got to this step right here, this is personally the way I think about it, that's saying that the opposite of y is 5x minus 2, which means regular y has to be negative 5x plus 2. Okay. All right. This one, remember, y equals mx plus b. So you want y's equal the x's and the constant. We divide both sides by 4. All right, now look what's going on here. You have a negative x over a positive 4. First off, that's a negative number. There is a 1 sitting right there. It makes more sense to people, if we're talking about a line, instead of putting negative x over 4, which is right, to put negative 1/4 x, because then I can see the slope. And then I've got a negative 10 over 4. Both of those are even. They divide by 2. So it's a negative number. Half a 10, half a 4. So then I've got y equals mx plus b. My slope's negative 1/4. My y-intercept, negative 5/2. Okay. I'm doing the same thing here. Leave the y's. Take the x's over. Divide both sides by negative 3. So you get negative 4x over negative 3. First off, that's positive. The number part of it, 4/3, and there's an x. And it's okay. Like 4/3 x means 4/3 times x over 1, which is 4x over 3. See why they're the same? And then out on the end, You got that -7 divided by a -3. That's a positive 7/3. There's my slope-intercept form of the line. The slope is 4/3. The y-intercept is 7/3.